Welcome to the UIAAAConnection podcast. Hometown Ticketing is proud to be the exclusive sponsor of the UIAAAConnection podcast and to provide schools nationwide with the best options for digital ticketing for their events. Visit their website at hometownticketing.com to learn how they can make digital ticketing possible and simple at your school. Thank you to Hometown Ticketing for their exclusive sponsorship of the UIAAAConnection podcast.
Welcome back to another edition of the UIAAA Connection. I'm your host, Mark Hutch Hunter. Today we have as our special guests two representatives from one of our gold sponsors, Snap Mobile. We have Nick Tsagalakis and Pat Maloney. Welcome to the podcast, Nick and Pat.
Thanks, Hutch. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, Hutch. We're excited to be here and sit down and chat with you.
All right, let's start by, we'll start with you, Nick, and then we'll go to Pat. Spend just a couple minutes talking where you grew up, where you went to college, your first job, etc.
Love it. Yeah, grew up in Seattle, Washington, and in Ballard. Went to Ballard High School, which is actually where our CEO of Snap Mobile went to school as well. He won a state championship actually right before my freshman year. Attended University of Washington. Was an invited walk-on to play baseball, but I actually tore my ACL, so gave up my college baseball career pretty quickly, which was a bummer. Yeah.
Okay, Pat, how about you?
For sure, I'm gonna have to add, Nick is an established diver as well.
Oh,
Yeah, they actually I made the high school basketball team and they made me sign a contract saying I wasn't allowed to ski. So I quit the basketball team and joined the swim and dive team. And I had the most incredible coach, and I not to toot my own horn, but I actually have every high school diving record at Ballard High School. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Thanks for sharing that, Pat. Let's talk about your youth for a minute.
Sure, yeah. Grew up in Northern California. I currently reside in Northern California near the Sacramento region. Play sports, played, I guess, the big three. Ended up putting a focus on football towards the end of my high school career. Ended up going out and playing in the Midwest at a FCS school, Southeast Missouri State. Stayed on staff.
Not to be confused with Southwest Missouri State, because there's a Southeast and a Southwest. Okay.
Yeah, there's actually a Northwest, which is a powerhouse Division II program. So I was right there on the Mississippi out in Cape Girardeau, Missouri. So had some fun out there. Got to play with some really awesome teammates. But ended up moving back to the West Coast, and first job, man, what was my first job? Officially, I think it was digging posts for a fence company, but I've worked with my dad pretty much my entire life, so I'm not going to get him in trouble for any kind of child labor.
That's perfect. All right, Pat, we'll start with you on the second question. Let's have you mention some of the mentors you've had in your life, younger days, teenage days, and in your professional career that made a difference.
Sure, yeah. Boy, would my parents be upset if I didn't mention them, right? No, I'm kidding, because they have played such a huge role in my life. Inspiration wise, daily hard work that there was no complaints about, and that's something that I try to stay proud of, as far as putting in the time and the effort needed to get the job done. So definitely the parents, obviously. As far as teachers, coaches, man, it would be really hard for me to hone in on just one. I'll keep it just to one though, for the sake of time. But I had an anatomy and physiology teacher in college, and she was the best professor I ever had. Pushed me like I never thought I could be pushed. In a class that there was about a 30% pass rate, and she just taught me a lot of things as far as putting in the effort on a day-to-day basis to make sure that the things that you were learning were imprinted in your brain forever, right? not learning them to forget them. You're learning them to remember. So that's one. My coaching wise, boy, my 6th grade basketball coach, Hung Yuen, kind of changed my life as far as I was a little pudgy kid. My 3rd grade, my first year ever playing baseball, Nate Beck, who is also a coach, he changed my life as well. So, I mean, I think going back, I want to, kind of highlight specifically when I was really young, just because in those times as a coach, the impression that you make on a student athlete or an athlete is huge. And I remember, I still remember, feeding the midget and feeding the dragon when it comes to, throwing a baseball. And some of those things just kind of lasted with me. So.
That's great. Thanks for sharing. Nick, how about you? Some mentors that made a difference in your life?
Yeah, to be honest, my dad has been the biggest mentor. Both my parents are Greek. My dad is actually a Greek Orthodox priest. So I grew up my whole life as the PK, as they say, the priest kid. And he just instilled so much wisdom and grace in how he approaches life and how we've dealt with conflict as a family. And it's just been an honor to be, taught and led by him in my life. As far as business, I'd say, when I actually moved to Utah after living in Seattle my whole life, and I'd never actually been here before. Moved to Salt Lake to be a ski bum. And my very first job was actually at Make-A-Wish, Utah. And I was the Wish hospitality coordinator, which was an incredible experience. And the CEO, Jared Perry, he actually this year he was nominated. He actually was selected as the CEO of the year for Utah Business Magazine. But he's just been an incredible inspiration. And we go get monthly lunches, and he's been an incredible mentor for me in my life. And as far as like my life with Snap Raise, Bob Fratto has just been a coach I've always admired over at Cypress High School. He actually retired a couple of years ago, but just the way he ran his program and kind of coached his kids up, he demanded nothing but the best when it came to effort. And yeah, he's a big inspiration for me as well in the state of Utah. So
thank you both for sharing those great examples. Let me ask you both another personal question before we get into the meat of the conversation. I think, Nick, it's your turn to go first. What's your biggest failure or disappointment in life, and what did you learn from it?
Wow, you're getting deep, Hutch.
Yeah.
When I had never really been in sales before, and when I started at Snap Mobile or Snap Raise at the time, it was grassroots, and we were really kind of pioneering the whole realm of online fundraising. It was foreign to our coaches and athletic directors, and we were taught to go after coaches and get them to utilize our platform and our service. And I hope to provide the best service as we could. And along that whole process, I think I lost sight of how important it was to talk to administrators and principals and understanding school policy. And that's something, while we can meet every school policies with our platform, that was probably my biggest failure in not, talking to principals and making sure they're aware of our process and our platform. So, just having integrity. I learned, it's important to have integrity and communicate at a high level with our administrators and our principals, and really understanding policy and the way things need to be done from each school and each group we work with. So.
Excellent. Pat, to you.
Yeah, and just to make a comment on that, right, is like, you don't know what you don't know. And we've learned the landscape of this state, right? So although that it was a missed opportunity, right, we're trying to go back and make sure that we iron as much out with that as we possibly can, because our platform does allow for the opportunity for us to follow whichever kind of policy that may be, right? But boy, yeah. So my biggest failure, aside from not containing 6'3" Jake Maluznik, La Sierra Community Center summer league rec basketball, and future track star UVA track runner Dre Sherrill in the championship. I think I was in 7th grade. No, I'm joking. Biggest failure probably. Yeah, this is kind of an interesting thing, because for what I would deem as my biggest failure allowed for my biggest opportunity in life. And I feel like sometimes that's the case. So, throughout, me going to school, I ended up staying in school after I was playing and coaching. And, I have my postgrad studies in biomedical science, and, I was pre-med to an extent. I wanted to be a practitioner. That was just something that I had in my head. I can't even remember how long, right? I mean, just ever since I started going to school. So I had this notion that no matter what, I was going to be in the healthcare field as a practitioner in some sort, whether that be a doctor, nurse practitioner. An opportunity crossed my face. It was kind of in the meantime of taking some classes, taking the MCATs, taking the T's, which is like the MCATs for, nursing students. And a company came across my face getting back into athletics, not SNAP specifically, but it was a really close friend, one of my best friends, that said, "Hey, just try it out for 6 months. I think you'd be, really good at it. Try it out. If you don't like it, continue to pursue, right? Or do it anyways, and have some fun while you do it in the meantime of you going off into, med school or wherever you plan on going." So to define that as a failure, right? That I didn't pursue that lifelong goal of being a healthcare practitioner. And I think really where it turns into an opportunity is, I felt like that was a good fit for me in that position, which ultimately led to me being introduced to Snap Mobile, right? And I've been here for 7 years as of last week, actually, and I absolutely love it. Every single day is different. I couldn't imagine me not doing this, right? So I hate to put that twist on your deep question, Hutch, but
No,
that's a little bad.
Not a problem. Thanks for sharing that. Along those same lines, let me ask you both this. What's the one thing you wish you had known when you began your career that you know now that you didn't know then? We'll start with Pat and then go to Nick.
Yeah. I think for me, and it's still something that I maybe not struggle with, but still have to mold it to fit my life, my personal life, is respecting my time and living my life based off of the agenda that I put, right? So I'm a big believer that there's freedom and discipline. And, if you're not disciplined with your time, then it turns into chaos. I wish I would have grabbed a hold of that early on in my career, more so than I do now, right? And being able to change that, right? So once you get into a routine, if something changes, you need to change that routine to fit it better, right? And that's something that I'd probably say that I wish I would have known at the beginning or embraced a little bit more.
All right, Nick.
I would just say, what it is to be organized. I struggle with organization and, creating a good plan and having a schedule in your day to day and kind of sticking to it. Learning the tools and resources to be able to make that happen was something I wish I kind of learned and honed in on at the beginning of my career. And Snap is a very process-driven company, and in the way we, work with our coaches and group leaders, and following the process, and the people that have the best process and follow it to a T are usually the people who end up being the most successful in life. So, having a good process at the beginning of my career with whatever that looks like in life, I'd say, is really important. So,
thank you. I'm interested in hearing both of your answers to this next question. And the question is, the job of athletic director today, from your point of view, being outside working with ADs all the time, how is the job different today than, let's say, it was 7-10 10, 12 years ago? Nick, you go first.
Yeah, I'd say I actually started at Snap 7, 8 years ago, and I felt like every athletic director also was more or less a part-time or almost full-time teacher. And I've seen that transition to become more of a full-time responsibility because of the day-to-day duties and what it really takes to do a good job as an athletic director. And you know, just the ever-changing landscape of policy and meeting district, you know, the changes in what comes year after year is been a big change. But I'd say that just the full-time role in this year's athletic directors relative to it being more of a part-time role in the past because of the need of what they have to do day to day.
Thank you. Pat?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question, because the role definitely has changed. And I feel like, you know, each school, each region, even, you know, Nick specifically, our director within the state of Utah, and, you know, I'm part of a team that covers the Southwestern United States. So every state that we're in, and even regionally in each one of those states, the definition of what an athletic director is different, right? And what I'm starting to see more so than anything is that a lot of those roles are starting to become more uniform, because it's just that the space in the industry is naturally molding it into, hey, this is what an AD looks like, right? One thing I also have noticed, I mean, in the past 8 years, just like with anything else, any industry, is the tech boom, right? So there are so many different resources and tools out there when it comes to, you know, being able to utilize it as an athletic director, athletic admin in the tech space. And 8 years ago, a lot of ADs that we would have conversation with, admin would have conversation with, were really just trying to stay afloat because there's just so much to do, right? What I've seen is a lot of these tools and these resources become more and more refined and really cater to what athletic admin truly need on a day-to-day basis, right? The double-edged sword to that, in my opinion, Hutch, is with so much opportunity in the tech space, is there's so much opportunity to vet and to sift through, right? So I think that's you know, that's a new struggle that a lot of ADs are having to do, is, you know, there's a lot of good options out there for the different tools and resources that they can use, right?
Excellent. Let's get down to specifics now. The next couple of questions. The first one, more of a general question. Speak to some of the best fundraising ideas out there for ADs. And then after that, then we'll get into specifically to Snap and what it can do for ADs. So I think maybe, Pat, it's your turn first.
Sure, yeah. I kind of wish this was the worst fundraising ideas, because we've come across some pretty crazy things, right? But not to speak ill on, you know, anybody and what they need, you know, what they use to, you know, raise money for their programs. The best ideas, in my opinion, I mean, outside of Snap, I've coached the last 5 years in Sacramento, or the greater Sacramento area. The best ideas that I've seen are the multifaceted community-based fundraiser, because people get excited for it. It's preseason. It kind of primes the pipes for people to become excited for, let's say, the football season or the basketball season or whatever it may be. So, you know, at the school that I coached at last year, and for the past 3 years before that, was, you know, every year in the summer we do tacos, cornhole, and a silent auction, and that's all in one night. So, you know, we do it under the lights on the baseball field. We have, you know, bag toss sets, and it's a tournament style. It's fun. Everybody looks forward to it. There's a taco truck out there, so you get to eat a bunch of tacos, and there's a bunch of really cool items that, you know, that people can auction off, right? And it's a really good way for you to, you know, get on the mic as a coach, or even an athletic director. Our AD jumped on the mic and kind of spoke, said a few words, and just thanked the community for their support, and, you know, got them excited for the season. So I think, you know, in my opinion, that's something that is, you know, that's paramount for a program to have something like that, to, thank the donors or thank, the fans for coming out the previous season, and excited for the upcoming season.
Thanks, Pat.
And of course,
great ideas.
Yeah, obviously we think our platform is the best idea, right? But I didn't really want to jump into that so much, and I'll let Nick jump into it.
Nick, go ahead, and then
Yeah,
we'll come back to Snap.
I totally agree with Pat on the local level, finding different ways to engage your community. I've seen golf tournaments be really, really successful, although it takes a ton of work and time from our coaches, kids, and parents. It's a fun way to engage your community. Dinner auctions I've seen to be very successful and a fun way to engage the community. I think card sales has been like kind of the bread and butter for football teams, right? And selling things, but we've seen a lot of coaches and just teams in general get away from the selling because it's not as safe and effective, and you don't quite have the national reach that you do with just an online platform in general, right? So I think we're seeing a lot of teams kind of make the shift towards the online space because it's really just is safer and more effective in what it saves coaches and kids times at the end of the day. And coaches job is not to fundraise, nor it should be the kids or the parents. And they should be focusing on coaching and being present with their families and focusing on what matters the most, right? So
Exactly. Well said. Let's get to the crux of the matter then. Yes, go ahead.
Oh, sorry, Hutch. Something to add to that. What we've seen is, let's say an item that you're selling to help support the program is $25. Most donors want to give way more than that, right? And most donors are typically only going to buy one unit or whatever product that you're selling. What we want to do is, if they're willing to give and they want to give more, we don't want to create that ceiling for them, right? And I think, in that online space, if we have the means and people want to support a program even more because they know the true cost of running the program, because that's part of, what we do is the education process of the donors and supporters of how expensive it is to run a program. If we give them that option and, they're more than willing to give more, we want to give them that opportunity.
Very good. And that dovetails into the big question. So we'll just continue with you, Pat, and then go back to Nick. So talk about Snap Mobile, about the UIAAA partnership, why it's such a success, and obviously your time to talk about your product and the uniques about your product that make it something that needs to be in the high schools here in Utah and across the nation.
Yeah. So, mainly, Hutch, our bread and butter is in the fundraising space, right? And raising money. That's what we would consider as the route to building a program. In order for you to continue to build a program at the rate that you want to, funds are necessary, right? But outside of that, having a single sign-in that allows for admin, coaches, student athletes, parents, all alike, to be in one place, to be the most efficient, to cover every need that you possibly can, that's truly what we want to provide, right? So through adoption and acquisitions in the past couple of years, we've truly made that transition from, not just a fundraising company, but to a program management software, where admin can come in and have all the trackability that they need. Bookkeepers can come in and pull the reports needed. If they want to be able to manage their rosters, calendar, website, sponsorships, banking, giving of funds, fan gear, all of that in one place. So that way they don't have, the idea for us is, as long as we're not using my browser as an example, having 50 tabs open, we want to consolidate that down to as little as possible. So that way, sure, our admin and our coaches aren't spending time in front of the screen. Leave that to us. And they can spend more time doing what matters, like Nick had mentioned before, and that's coaching their kids, coaching the coaches, if you're admin, athletic admin, coaching your coaches on how to best lead our student athletes. So that's the idea, behind it. It pairs really well. Hutch, you and I have had a lot of conversations when it comes to this with UIAAA, just because, we want to provide those resources, and the resources that cater to what, your athletic, what everybody needs in the space of athletics. We want to cater to what is the best fit for that landscape.
Absolutely. Nick, add on to that.
Yeah, I just think, how athletic directors' lives have changed is they have 10 different logins for 10 different aspects of their day-to-day responsibilities as athletic directors. And, at the UIAAA conference, I look around that vendor room, and other than anyone who wasn't selling, volleyball poles or new fields, we provide that in one space. And I think that's a pretty powerful tool, and really, we're proud of what we're building, and we're really excited about our partnership with you and the UIAAA. And yeah.
Pat, anything else you want? This is a couple minutes you have to brag on Snap Raise. Anything else we haven't brought up? Go ahead and share with our audience.
Yeah, definitely. I appreciate that. So, something that, and without sounding like we're, trying to sell people to, to utilize our platform so much, we have these different resources that we want to make available. And one of them that we have been piloting for, I want to say about 12 or 18 months is the concept of early access. And, I don't really think, in fact, I know nobody in this space is really doing this. And it allows for us to come in, and if, let's say, an athletic department or a specific program, they want or they need something that has a purchase order, a price ticket that's outside of what they can allocate funds for at that time, we have the ability to come in and front that money and recoup on our future campaign and or sponsorships through our Snap Mobile management software. So, for instance, if, let's say, I'm a football guy, so I'll stick with football. I'll stick with what I know. The 3-man sled, if it's, let's say, $5,000, and last year we raised Nick, not to, put anybody on the spot, but can you give a football program that you worked with last year that did really well?
Yes, Summit Academy.
How much did they raise?
Like 32,000.
32,000. And, if, let's say, a 3-man sled is 7,000 and they've already spent that money, and we feel so confident that our platform can come and raise that again, we'll front the money for that $7,000 sled. So that way we don't have to fundraise at a season, and we can continue to do it at the most prime time. Right. So that's something that we're really excited about. And it's really kind of changed the game for a lot of our coaches, whether it's paying subscriptions up front, like, let's say, a Huddle subscription. We can divvy those funds up to the program and then just recoup on the back end. Something else, that in the same vein, Hutch, that we're really excited for is our Snap Sponsor and our FanX app. So Snap Sponsor is a way to manage all of your current sponsorships, and that's online advertisements as well as physical banner space. I don't think there's anything out there that helps either athletic directors, admin, or coaches put that in one place to help organize it. And that's just part of the offering that we have within our platform. And in that same space of online advertisement, we just recently acquired a company that has been running the NCAA, men's basketball tournament app, at, the College World Series, along with 150 collegiate athletic apps. And we're really excited because this concept of a single sign-on, fan stewardship, and building programs, having this available and providing it to our athletic admin to continue on, building those programs and integrating with all of these different things that they're utilizing, the resources and tools. If we can have that in one place on an app, not just for our coaches, but for our students, our student athletes, our teachers. My wife uses the app at the school that I coach at for scheduling and rosters and we're really excited about, the different tools that we can now make available to our schools.
Excellent. What's the favorite part of your job? We'll go to Nick and then we'll go back to Pat.
I mean, I'm such a sports guy. I love being in the space of sports and working with coaches and kids, and just taking that off a coach's plate and making their life so much easier. It's such an honor, and I just love working in the space of sports. Every championship team we work with, we deliver them a championship team banner, and that's one of my favorite parts of my job is when one of our teams wins a state championship, I get to go deliver them a state championship banner, which is pretty awesome. And yeah, I just love being in the space of sports and working with kids and helping the programs I serve here in Utah.
Pat?
Yeah, in pretty similar to that, I think just to sum it up into one word, I would say impact, right? So the amount of impact that we have, directly or indirectly through taking that, certain things off of the plates of our coaches so that way they can focus on what matters, or admin in the same effect. But the impact, I mean, handing over, a check to a program because, they're now able to go on their first trip, out of state trip, right? That type of impact is hands down my favorite part of the job, right? Hearing about those wins fuels me for sure.
Thank you both. This next question, as we get to wrap it up, is from your perspective now as a vendor, a fundraiser helping ADs. You've got 2 suggestions for a brand new AD, maybe 1 to 3 years, and they need to follow your 2 suggestions in order to be a success. What would your 2 suggestions be? I think Pat and then Nick.
Sure. It was kind of cutting out, but I think I caught all that. Yeah, I mean, by no means am I an athletic director, right? So, and we're lucky enough to work with some amazing people in the athletic admin realm. I always kind of relate it, and being at a lot of these different events with you, Hutch, and the speakers, we try to peek in on a lot of those speakers. I don't know if we're allowed to at UIAAA, but we do it anyways.
Yeah.
We gain a lot of knowledge from these because these are athletic leaders from around the nation, and they have a lot of gold nuggets that we can pull and apply in our space of SNAP selfishly, right? But one thing that I've noticed, and I was just at the California State Athletic Director Association conference this past weekend, and UIAAA the weekend before, being around your people, right? As a new AD, being around the people that have been in the space for as long as they have been and that are excelling, that's a really great thinking tank for you to pull nuggets for what you can do as a new athletic director. I think that's big. And when you think of it, it's a coaching clinic on how to best coach your coaches, right? That's a lot of the use of the word coach, but it's true, right? So the best of the coaches at the professional level, collegiate level, high school level still go to clinics. They still meet with each other and they bounce ideas off of each other. And the overused saying like iron sharpens iron, is true at its core when it comes to attending these different events. I think that the second suggestion that I would give is communication. We hear this a lot. We have a lot of communication with athletic administrators, and Nick, you can probably attest to this, that we hear from especially newer ADs or ADs that move from one school and into the next school. My admin doesn't even know what I do, right? They don't understand how much I do on a day-to-day basis, right? And you've probably heard it too, Hutch, right?
Oh, yes.
So the communication, I would suggest with young ADs is making sure that you communicate up the ladder and your admin knows what all you do or what you can potentially need help with, right? Asking for that help because they're well aware of, your day-to-day.
Exactly. Nick, your 2 suggestions.
Yeah, I'd say that you actually stole mine, Pat. That was actually be my first suggestion is just don't be afraid to ask for help and partnering with good resources and mentors who have been in the game and have understand what it means to be a good athletic director and serve your coaches and your kids to the best of your ability. I'd say second is finding ways to simplify your day-to-day tasks so you can focus on what matters most and spending time with your coaches and your students and making sure you're serving them the best. And what that looks like, I'm sure it varies from school to school, AD to AD, but not being closed-minded and open to new solutions, even if it's changing the old way that you did something to be more efficient and effective, and whatever that looks like. So those are, I'd say, my two.
Great suggestions. Thanks to both of you. Let's finish up with this question. I believe we'll go Nick and then we'll go Pat. At least you think that I'm that smart. I plagiarized this question from another interviewer. The question is, what question should I have asked you that I failed to ask you? Nick?
You did a pretty darn good job, Hutch. I don't know. What's my who's my favorite school to work with and why?
Okay, there it is. There's your platform. Who's your favorite school work and tell us why.
I don't know why. I just love those kids at Cypress High School and their coaching staff. They're just a hardworking group of kids. And I like working with coaches and kids who put in the effort. They're not given anything, and they have to work for it, and they're a hardworking group of kids. So
that's great. Thanks for sharing that. Pat, to you. You get the last word. What is one question that I should have asked you that I failed to ask you?
Yeah, that's a tough one, Hutch. The only one that comes to mind is how many points will the Sacramento Kings beat the Golden State Warriors by tonight?
Okay, so that you're going to go on record. It's
yeah, there you go.
It's in Sacktown, so tell us how many points the Kings are going to win by.
Oh man, to be honest, I think it's going to be a pretty close game. So I'm hoping that we win. Period. How about that one?
All right, that's great. With that wraps it up for this edition of the UIAAA Connection. Again, our guests today have been Nick Tsagalakis and Pat Maloney from Snap Mobile, one of the UIAAA Gold business partners and the official fundraiser of the UIAAA. Thank you both for being on the podcast.
Thanks, Hutch. Appreciate you.
Yeah, thanks, Hutch. We really appreciate it.
For our listeners, we hope you tune in again next week for another edition of the UIAAA Connection.